Okay, so in previous lessons, we did S1, 2, 3, 4, and 7. Now S1 was about perimeter, but the other 4 lessons were all about area. We found the area of rectangles and squares, the area of triangles and parallelograms, the area of trapezoids, and also the area of circles. Today's lesson is S8, area of compound figures. Now, compound means more than one. So we don't have a direct formula to solve for the area of this figure, but we can break it into shapes that we know how to find the area of. So for example, if you look at the shape below, you should notice that you can break this shape into 2 rectangles. How? Well, I'm going to go ahead and add the line right there. And now you can see that you have a rectangle on the left and a rectangle on the right. In order to find the area of this figure, you need to find the area of rectangle 1, find the area of rectangle 2, and then add those 2 areas together. So let's go ahead and do this problem. I'm going to label my work here according to what I labeled my diagram. So for rectangle 1, I have area equals length times width. Just be careful about what numbers you use. This 10 here is not used for rectangle number 1. 10 is the entire distance from here to here. The number that you have to use for length and width, well, 5 is the distance from here to here, and 6 is the distance from here to here. So I need to use 5 and 6. So the area of rectangle 1 is 30 square inches. For rectangle 2, well, the formula is length times width. And again, my measurements are 3 inches by 4 inches. Giving me 12. After I find the area of each of those, I add the 2 areas together to give me my total area. And just be careful with this problem. There's numbers on here that were not used. The 10 was not used. This 2 here was also not used in our calculation. So just be careful about that. 42. Okay, the next problem. Okay, here it looks like we have 3 different shapes. I'm going to go ahead and make my cut to make it into shapes that are familiar to us. There I have rectangle number 1. I could go ahead and cut it here, giving me rectangle number 2. And then I could go ahead and just label the 3rd rectangle. Okay, for rectangle number 1, area is length times width. Again, just be careful about what measurements you use. I know that this rectangle is 8 by 9. This 11 is the distance from here to here. It extends past my rectangle. So I need to use 8 and 9. So the area of rectangle number 1 is 72. For the area of rectangle number 2, well, I have the height is 6. Now be careful about this one. This one here is kind of tricky. It has an 11 here, but the 11 is the distance from here all the way to here. That distance is 11. So how would I find the distance from just here to here? Well, this is where you have to know the properties of a rectangle. the sides opposite in a rectangle are congruent. So I actually know that this piece from here to here is 4. And I know that because opposite the rectangle is the same. And that side said 4. Now, if this whole piece from here to here is 11, and this piece is 4, how can I figure out what this piece is from here to here? Well, I need to subtract. The whole piece is 11 minus 4, giving me 7. So the piece from here to here is 7, which makes sense because 7 plus 4 gives me 11. So now, for rectangle number 2, I know that my width is 7, giving me an area of 42. For rectangle number 3, my measurements are just given to me. I have 4 and 3, which gives me 12. And again, you have to go ahead and add them all together. So 72 plus 42 plus 12 is 126. Okay, so we just did a couple problems like this, so I'm going to go ahead and skip this one. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Again, there's no direct formula to solve for a shape like this, to solve for the area for a shape like this. You need to break it into shapes that you know how to find the area of. The good news is this one's not so bad. You could just break it there and there. You should see that you get a rectangle, and a triangle. So you're going to have 3 calculations to find the area for each of those figures, and then you're just going to add them all together. So the area for figure 1, it's a rectangle, so length times width, and we have 7 times 3. So that one was nice and direct. That one's 21. For 2, I just want to make sure I label these. 2 is also a rectangle. We have 9. Okay, now just be careful about this one. Once again, you have to use some properties to help you. 4 is part of it, but it's not the whole thing. Everyone see this 4 right here? Well, 4 is the distance from here to here. You also need this distance, which we know opposite sides of a rectangle are congruent. So that distance right in there is also a 3. Well, then the whole distance going all the way across is 4 plus 3, which gives you 7. Finally, the bottom piece. Now be careful because the formula is not length times width, it's 1/2 base times height because it's a triangle. Okay, now I see this measurement here is 10, so I'm going to go ahead and substitute that in. The distance from here to here is 15, but just like from before, I need to go ahead and use the opposite and say, well, if this piece was 3, this piece was also 3. And I want the distance from here to here. So that total distance is going to be an 18. So my height is 18. Now that everything is being multiplied together, 1/2 times 10 is 5, and 5 times 18 is 90. So the area of the triangle is 90. Now we're going to go ahead and add these all together. 21, 63, and 90 added together. It's going to give me 174. Okay, again, getting maybe a little bit harder, just because the cuts were not just two horizontal cuts. However, you should see that that's a nice cut. It makes a nice triangle. We could also cut it right there. So we have a triangle, a rectangle, and a rectangle. We have three different areas that we have to solve for. So first, let's take care of the triangle. 1/2 base times height. Substituting in, I see that I have a 7 for my base. Once again, you have to be careful about the height here on this one. Okay, I'm just looking to make sure that I don't make a silly mistake here. Okay, in this problem, I need to know what this height is. Now, when I do this problem, I see that I have 2, 3, which gives me 5, plus another 5, which means that this entire height of that rectangle has to be 10, because 2 plus 3 plus 5 is 10. Now, when I look over here, I see that I had 6 inches. In order to find out what this piece that I drew in to make the triangle, I would have to subtract 10 minus 6 to give me 4. And now to find the entire height of my triangle, well, initially I had 5 from here to here, plus an additional 4, so the height of my triangle is 9. Now I have 1/2 times 7 times 9. 1/2 times 7 times 9 is 31.5. For my second rectangle, length times width, my length is 4, my width as calculated before was 10, 40, and for my third one, well, that's that small piece, that's just 2 by 3. 2 times 3 gives me 6. Adding these all together, I have 40, 31.5, and 6, giving me a total of 77.5. Again, it wants our answers using decimals if necessary, so we need a decimal for this one. Okay, and again, as you can see, the problems may get a little bit harder. But what you have to do is just keep drawing in the cuts to make shapes that you know. There's a triangle. You can cut it here to make a rectangle. I can cut it here to make 2 other rectangles. So in this problem, you have a rectangle, a rectangle, a rectangle, and a triangle. Okay, I'm not actually going to go through and do all the math with you, but I just showed you all the cuts. Okay, I do want to do a problem like this because it incorporates a circle. So the process is the same of making your cuts. And I go ahead and cut it there. I also need to cut it there. Now be careful about this one because I'm making a rectangle right there. And then I'm making another rectangle there. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this guy here. I didn't need to. Now, if I cut it there, it wouldn't have mattered. You could just add up another rectangle. But it might make sense just to do this problem all in one. You could see that big rectangle there. Okay, so now for this problem, I have a rectangle here. I have a rectangle here. I have a rectangle here. And I have part of a circle over there. How much of the circle do I have? Well, I have a quarter of that circle. And it says to use 3.14 for pi. So when we go ahead and do that area, we have to make sure that we use 3.14 for pi. All right, so this problem, we're going to use quite a bit of space. For the first rectangle, I have 12 by 8. 12 times 8 is 96. For the second rectangle, just got to be careful about getting your measurements because if you look, you don't have those measurements given to you. So for the second rectangle, you should notice that this distance from here to here is 12. If this is 4 and that's 3, the missing distance for this piece is to be 5. Because 3 plus 5 plus 4 equals 12. So I now know that the length is 5. Now to find the width. Well, I know that this piece from here to here is 9, and this piece from here to here is 4. 9 plus 4 is going to give me 13. So I know that that whole piece is 13. So now I have my measurements 5 and 13. For the second one, length times width, 5 times 13, and that gives me 65. For the third rectangle, I have 10 by 9. 10 times 9 is 90. Just going to fix my writing here. Okay. And then finally, for the quarter circle, well, to find the area of a circle, I would say pi r squared. But that's for the area of the entire circle. Like we were saying before, we don't have an entire circle. We only have a quarter circle. So I only have 1/4 of an entire circle. So instead of pi r squared, it's 1/4 pi r squared. Substituting in, I have 1/4. Again, they said to use 3.14 for pi. Now r, I have to figure out what the radius is here. So this entire distance from here to here is 22. I know that from here to here is 10. And I know that from here to here is 5. So the missing piece would have to be 7. Because 7 plus 5 plus 10 is going to give me 22. So my radius that I need to use is 7. Okay, just be careful here because you're going to get some decimals. So 7 squared is 49 times 3.14 times a fourth, or 0.25. And I get 38.5. .465. Okay, it says to write your answers using decimals, use 3.14 for pi. Doesn't say to round, so I'm going to go ahead and add up these four areas. 38.465 plus we got a 90 plus a 96 plus a 65. I'm going to go ahead and use my calculator. 38.465 plus 90 plus 96 plus 65. I get 289.465. $289.465. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. For this assignment, I'm not going to have your SMART score be as high because some of these problems do take a long time. So for this assignment, your SMART score just has to be 75 or higher. Okay, you do not have to get to the 90 or higher. Okay, good luck.